So, who are we really? Who are we? Who am I? And one of the way I can try to point at it is with these 3 chairs. Because here we are born, here we come into the world, and you know perfectly well, as a little newborn child is totally innocent and totally open. So the little child comes as an absolutely pure consciousness. There's no separation, there's no distinctions, because there's no language. It's just an openness. And the child cannot distinguish between the child and the toys and the mother. It's just been one with the mother. It just comes from oneness. And still this oneness is totally present. And in a way will never go. So this oneness, this pure consciousness is never going really. It will always be there. But coming into a certain culture, being born into a certain historical time, in a particular religious society, and whatever, you were born in Russia, or you're born in Sweden, or you were born in Latin America, you have to eat from the tree of knowledge. You had to be conditioned. So this pure consciousness starts emerging as two. As a me, and what this me is experiencing. A subject and an object. Because when you are as a pure consciousness, somehow it's difficult to talk about experiences. Because to have an experience, it needs someone who is experiencing something. That is Maya, that is samsara, that is duality. And you cannot have an experience without this duality. So this duality arises the moment this pure consciousness starts getting colored and become something, become the mother. The moment the mother kind of arises as an object, the child comes. They come together. The I, the sense of me, the ego, rises at the same time as the object. What this me is experiencing arises. So this duality is created from this oneness here, from this pure consciousness. You call it conditioning, you call it upbringing, you call it whatever you want to call it. And they did some very interesting research in Russia. Even, you won't believe it, during the Stalin time, Vygotsky and some of these psychologists in Russia, they looked deep into it. Is it possible to have an experience without language? They looked very deep into that question. Can we talk about an experience without language? So language is what makes experiences possible. I totally agree. It's very difficult to talk about experiences without language. And it's funny that a country like that should look so deep into that, Vygotsky and these people. So we eat from the tree of knowledge, like it says in the Bible. Adam and Eve. It's the story. What is the tree of knowledge? It's conditioning, words, language, opinions, judgments. And you start experiencing a world with this language. And the more, if you go to Australia, and you go in the outback, you will die because you have no language for all these subtle experiences about the sand and the nature. You won't survive. If you go to Greenland, they have, I don't know how many words for ice. The Greenlanders or the Eskimos. It's all conditioning, you understand? If we are put up there somewhere, we will die immediately because we only have one word for it. And that one word is the way we see ice and snow. And in Australia, the Aboriginal, they can see immediately on the sand or whatever. They have an incredible language for all this, so they can survive. But we all are forced to eat from the tree of knowledge. And we come into the duality of life, the drama of a me and what this me is experiencing. And if you are born into a Muslim society, you know how that will be. You'll most likely become a Muslim because that's what you are taught to be. And if you're a Christian or you come into this neurotic society we are living in, so we're losing innocence. Adam and Eve did not feel shame before they learned the words. They looked at each other's bodies, that there was no problem. That's what we talked about this morning with the pagan society that has a natural relationship with food and sex and sleep. But we have not a natural relationship with these things. We talked about it in the car this morning, that we are brought up in such a sick society, and we had to deal with that sickness. So Adam and Eve was told, but you should not be naked. Your sex organs are dirty and ugly, and they had to put something over it. Otherwise, it's no problem. The newborn baby has no problem with his genitals. And I said this morning to Anne-Sophie that my mother has certainly not been perfect. But one of the biggest gifts she gave me, as I have seen other years after, that she was touching my body with joy. And singing when she was washing me as a little... And I learned that my body is okay and my sexuality is okay. It never left me. So later on when I started being with women, yeah, but it was natural to be touched and be caressed, and that was the biggest gift she gave me. Because she had a natural relationship with that with herself. I tell you, over the years, I have seen so many men and women struggling with the shame because they were not brought up like that. They were brought up by some Christian mother or Christian father or that saw this body as dirty and ugly, and the child will pick it up, will sense it and start repressing. So, slowly, this here takes form of these two. But it never goes, because that's who you are. There are people who can actually move into this duality of Maya, of samsara, of the drama of life, without forgetting it. In old India we call them avatars. Those who could still keep in touch, like Ananda Maimar and our Danish mystic Emmanuel Sunyata. Sunyata said about himself, he was born outside Aarhus in Denmark in 1990 or something. Yeah, I never forgot. And I like to be by myself because then I remembered it. So they're called avatars. In Sanskrit we have words for everything. But very few people, we all forget it. We get drowned. So this is who we are, and we never lose it, and it's the source, and it's the mother of all things. You can also call it a spark of the divine or whatever you want. It comes in here and become a me. Me. The personal pronoun. You. This is your father, this is your mother, and blah, blah, blah. And this me will always say, oh, I have a body, I have an experience, I have a feeling. It's always two. You understand? There's always this kind of me and something that this me is aware of. And a thing I didn't say to you the other day is that somehow this me is hiding in the object because it has no reality. It's called identification, it calls identity. So even though it somehow is separated, it still talks about itself in terms of something. I am a body, for instance. That's attachment to the body. Because you are aware of the body, but you also believe you are a body. Understand? You get identified. You don't see really, even though you talk about yourself and your body. But if you go down here in the street and pick some person up and say, tell me about you and your body, the person will talk as if he's the body. So who is he really? So this me, this ego sense that arises here, that everybody has no substance. So it kind of hides in the content of the mind, in feelings, in ideas, in thoughts, and beliefs that it is. If you go down on the street, they will say, oh yeah, I'm a Swedish person. What does that mean? It means some memories, some ideas, some objects, something here that this me is hiding in. And even though all this goes on changing, it's quite solid. So the first thing that the ego does to really kind of feel a certain solidity is to identify with the body. I'm a body. And you will see it's the last thing that goes when you're awakened. The identity with the body. It's very strong. Very strong. So the rascal, this ego sense, this me, is all the time hiding in feelings, in thoughts and ideas. Can you understand? And this is the play of this all the time. All the time. So this here is sitting and saying, oh, I long for love. I long so much for oneness and peace, because it's still this. That's why you deep down know what true love and true peace is. You know it deep down. But you've forgotten it because you're sitting here. And you try to find it in this. You try to find it in your imaginations. This is an imagination and this is an imagination. Dreamed by this. It's a dream. It's consciousness with forms and names here. And here is pure consciousness. Absolutely. So we do self-inquiry. What are we doing? We are feeling things, experiencing things, and then we ask, who's aware of this? We try to get the rascal out of the identity, out of the attachment, because he or she don't want, because she has no reality. She tries to escape in all the feelings and ideas and thoughts, and most likely this world here that this personal pronoun is kind of experiencing is totally mad. So it's difficult to come out of. It's a contradiction, this whole thing. If you live in Sweden, you are told that you are nothing special, and you also had to become something special. You're brought up in a schizophrenic situation, and you're brought up with rejecting your sexuality, your naturalness. You're brought up in a total sick society. And you're struggling with that, to deal with it. So we go into psychology to try to fix these experiences. Sex or whatever is here that you are suffering with and struggling with. It's not really you. It's your experiences you are struggling with. An object. But the moment you ask, but who is experiencing this? Then you come here. But it's a very naked space to come. But also freeing, because you kind of come out of the movie here. But the movie will pull you back very quickly again. Won't it? Doesn't take a long time before you're back again. That's why we have been working with projections and impermanence. Because all this is impermanent also. But it's not so easy to see. All these experiences have no substance other than this. So, when you're sitting here and I ask you, so what's going on in your mind? What is happening there now? What is the movie right now? And then the moment the next question comes, who's aware of this movie? I. You step in a way out of your attachment, of your involvement in your drama. In a way you step out of it with that very question. And depending how much is going on here, unfinished, unseen, you can stay here for a while. But if there is a lot of stuff here that is still pulling you, that is still struggling, that is still trying to you are pulled back immediately again. Who has a sexuality? I have. But if you don't have a natural kind of relaxed way with your sexuality, you will be pulled in again, isn't it? Oh shit. So that's why I talked about spiritual bypassing, that you cannot bypass these things. You must confront it also here. Otherwise you cannot ask the question, who's aware of this? You cannot, the rascal will drown in it and be involved in it. So the ego sense, the personal pronoun, has to be saying in a certain sense that there's not so much business here that is overwhelming or repressed. Like I told Anna-Sophie in the car this morning, I said, Freud, the last book of Freud was The Burden of Culture. He saw no way to deal with it. The burden of culture. And of course Freud has looked deep, but he was not awakened. But he has seen something. The burden of culture, that you can never, never, never come out of this damn culture. Christian, Muslims, whatever it is. So we are not trying to bypass anything. That's why I want you to look at everything as impermanent. Then you can maybe leave it and say, me. If you can see that this object, this whatever you are involved with of thoughts and feelings and experiences are impermanent, if you can see that really deeply, you can ask the question, who's aware of that? And there will be no problem leaving it. But if you believe in it, it has some kind of self-nature, some kind of reality. How can you leave it? You can bury it behind the stars, but it will still be there. Or in your back garden, but it will still be there. All forms and names are impermanent. That is something you must really investigate and see. And that is basically the Buddhist way, that life is impermanent, samsara. And it's pain, because nothing lasts, because only this lasts when you realize this. So, what are we doing? We try to get the rascal that is hiding in all this out. So the first thing that arises here when you ask, who am I, is the kind of, the normal daily personality kind of, the protecting self, we could say. The protecting self, the I, me. And it's a personal consciousness. And it's a very, very exposed place to come here. Very few people dare to come here because they know that there's nothing here really. There is not an entity here with a separate self-nature. It's an illusion. This here is also impermanent, whatever it is, because it basically hides in this. If you ask a person, who are you really? I don't want to hear about your job, your nationality, your memories, your wife, your children. Who are you? And the person will feel uncomfortable. He will say, can you not ask something else? Ask me about my job or my career or my money situation or something else, but not, excuse me, I don't know who I am. Because everybody knows somehow that this is an illusion. Somehow. So the first question, you pull the rascal out of attachment and identifications with the objects, with the body, with whatever is the experience that you believe in. I. Oh. It can be incredibly freeing and scary. Yeah, it's I. I'm aware of the body. I'm experiencing the body. And then mercilessness, we go on, but who are you? And then you know perfectly well that whatever answer can be given to this position here, you can ask the question again, who's aware of that? Because it's a new object. I am. And then you slowly start getting silent. If you really want to know who you are, slowly. And you start getting small glimpses of this, you know. That's why I moved the chair here. Small glimpses. Very radical. Has nothing to do with this duality. And like a great Zen master said, jokingly, why the hell do we have to pass through all this just to come to a place we never left? It's true. Every enlightened person will say that. Why on earth do I have to pass through all this hell to come to a place that I started with and that I never really left? And that is who we are. So you will start having these glimpses and then we will pull back in again in the drama. And if you can be still, not entertaining any thoughts. The moment you have any thoughts, you're in the duality here. Who's having a thought? Because there will be a sense of you and a thought. Who's having a thought? I. Who am I? Gently, gently. Like for me, I learned to be present. Because when you ask this question, who's aware of this moment? I am. You are here. You are here. Who is suffering? Who is having pain? I have. Who am I? This kind of inquiry brings you totally here now. And the truth is here now. It's just another way of bringing you into the living moment. But it takes a longing really to be wanting this, to come back. That's why we in East call it to be reborn, when we come back to this place that we in a way never left. And this place is the mother of this drama. So when you come back and you realize it again, after having passed through all this, you are still here in the body and you still have experiences, but you know every moment what is what. I have pain in my knee. I'm here in the body experiencing life, but there's always an undercurrent that I know. That all this imagination here is essentially me. And what is this me? It's not a person, it's just a presence that doesn't change. And it's you can digest all this stuff totally when you are here. But if you are not here, you cannot digest it. So why? You can go on doing therapy and you can try to work with this duality and try to fix it and try to make it livable. But if you don't come here again, you are not free. That's why I work with non-duality therapy, that I know the importance of also working with the constellation of this drama of life. We have to face it, because the sense of I, the rascal here, is totally drowned in attachment, in beliefs, in this world. And the moment you ask the question, who's aware of it, you start getting her or him out of this drama. It's the first step. But when we have, yesterday we worked with impermanence and projections. You cannot come out of it if it's unfinished. If you're still projecting and you're still having things deep in you that you have not really met, they will pull you back again. Otherwise, like Anandamaima, she came into the world, into the Indian society 100 years ago, or how long it is, 150 years ago, and was brought up in that old society with whatever the values and ideas, and she was married probably when she was 8-9 years with her husband, like they did in India those days, arranged marriage, and had a terrible mother-in-law, but she could be here in this drama of an Indian society 150 years ago, embodied, not forgetting this, not forgetting it. Emmanuel, this Danish guy, also very special, said, I didn't like so much to be with children and people those days because then I forgot who I am. So such an innocent way to say it. So he tried, somehow he knew he had to not to forget this. And he was very, very innocent. You read his book, Dancing with the Void. It's very incredible. He spent 40 years as a sadhu in India on a pension. And also, of course, met Ramana. So, every time we come here, we come as this pure consciousness, God itself, the very divine itself, and exploding into this duality of somebody experiencing something called conditioning. The primary conditioning, the secondary conditioning, and we totally forget this place here. Never really totally, because deep down we know what it is to be happy, but we cannot be happy here. But we don't forget to be happy. We're still going around trying to find it. And we're living in a world where everybody's looking for it. And then we met somebody like Ramana. Or we say, gosh, it's very, very provocative and very eye-opening. It's actually possible to realize something that is freeing you, even in this mess here. Even in this mess, a Danish society or a Swedish, and you get very inspired by it, and maybe Ramana says something that actually, even though you are totally involved here, for a moment rings in you about this. That's satsang. Here you come with all your ideas about spirituality and evolvement and whatever, and you come to satsang, and the person giving satsang is trying to talk from this place here. And maybe you're sitting here and hear it. Like, I saw Yngve this morning, in the end of this guy, he knows what he talks about, the one who's giving the breath session. He knows. He said a word that touched Yngve. And Yngve was, in that moment, he touched that, Yngve. In a very split second. And then it's gone again and he's back here. How does he come back? By start thinking about what it was. The moment you start thinking about it, you create this and this. Oh, yeah.
How do you do not to start thinking?
What?
How do you do not to start thinking about what it was?
Yeah. By one of the way is impermanence. That you have seen and seen and seen that it's your thoughts that takes you away, and that thought has no substance. But all the so-called spiritual path are all about dealing with, try to get you out of this drama. Or you go to the Buddhists and they will say, practice mindfulness, practice mindfulness. Because if you can be really, really present here, now, effortlessly, you are there right away. So all the spiritual path is somehow kind of, and if you come in satsang, it's very likely that the person giving satsang is talking from this place, and it resonates in you. Because deep down you know it. It just resonates. The person giving satsang may put it in a certain way that somehow ignites the memory in you about this. And you go, oh! And then you will know in that very moment that you've just been in a terrible dream, a nightmare. But that's why I tell you, get together sometimes, do things together, meditate together, support each other, because if you go out in this mad world, there's nobody who knows anything about this. And find ways where you either do self-inquiry or something else that slowly. When I met Papaji, I was introduced to this who am I stuff. And right away, I started inquiring moment to moment. So who's experiencing this moment? And I was here now. Who's experiencing this moment? I start practicing it. And Ramana even suggests that if you like Atma Vichar, self-inquiry, then start with just watching your breath. If you do it as a sadhana, as a kind of watch your breath. And when the mind has become a little quiet, then ask who's meditating. Who is meditating? People sit for 20 years and watching the mind and they never ask the question, who's actually sitting here and meditating? I am. Then you're out again. And then you ask, who am I? You sit for many, many years and you are entertaining all these ideas that goes on here. Goes on here. But this one here is never questioned. It's hiding. Because it doesn't want to be exposed. It likes very much if you are meditating for the next 30 years and just sit and watch all these passing thoughts and ideas coming and going. It's no danger for me. But if the question is asked, but who's meditating? Who? It's a very unpleasant question. Because there's nobody here. It's hiding. So now, come back to this place and stay here without thinking and just let it more and more. Yeah. And start watching the world from here. Seeing the world. Like I show you, take the world in from here. Then it won't harm you. It will be disappearing because this is the creator and the destroyer. This godliness, this pure consciousness is creating this whole magic, and it also destroys it. And that you will feel when you come fully home. That I'm everything. I am an effortless activity that creates and destroys. And it's such a joy to be that effortless activity. It's impersonal. It's such a joy. Such a freedom. It's absolute freedom because it's free of I. It's free of me. So when you see Jesus and when you have these kind of experiences, it is still the duality. It's still the Maya. That's why you cannot fully relax with it. You work with it and you can use it and you are blessed, but something is missing. That's what I felt in you yesterday. Somehow of a total, no questioning anything was missing. And that's what I try to get you into. Because when you really come home, there's no me questioning anything. It's just the flow of life, free. Don't care about this because it's all me. And it's all impermanent, so it ends up in me. Even an atom bomb exploding somewhere is an imagination. It doesn't touch who you are. You can be in the middle of the atom bomb and explode away, but that's the body that will explode away, not you. But this is very, very radical. And I can talk about it like this because I've been looking at it now for 20 years. Since it came the first time. The first time I was just overwhelmed. I cried and cried and cried. And I just grateful, crying. After some days, doubt starts coming back. I start doubting it. And I had years in fight with doubt. Keep on coming back, trying to pick me, get me. And until I start saying, but doubt is also that. Doubt is also that. That was one of my ways. Because then I knew doubt was also that. Doubt is also an experience. So I didn't fight with it. But for many seekers who have a moment of clarity, the next things that will happen, they may come in here for one split second, and then arises this drama as doubt, me and doubt. Doubt, shit. Oh, I was in such a beautiful space, and what to do with the doubt, and and you come into the drama, totally. But then you can ask the question after a while, after you have been in doubt for I don't know how long, who is in doubt? Who's having doubt? I have. Who am I? Again, you can come out of it this way. Advaita, this way of working with Atma Vichar and Advaita, I think Advaita is older than Buddhism, way older. And it comes from for how I see it, it's Nukunu talking, but a high culture that we don't have anymore. Where the purpose of life was to become enlightened. Like you can still smell from Tibet, for instance. That you were born here to become awakened. That's the purpose of being born. And in the old India it was the same. Why am I born here in this physical body? To wake up. And you can still smell from Tibet, right? Still there, even though the Chinese try to take it away the best they can. Because we are coming into the Kali Yuga, the very low culture. But there's still a smell of it. What is the purpose of this life? It is, of course, to wake up. If you ask a Swedish person that is busy with his or her business, what is the purpose of life? What do you think the person will say? Yeah, money, welfare, children, whatever. Or the person will say, can you not ask something else? Why are you living here? What are you doing here? What is the purpose of your life?
Nowadays, this personal development.
Yeah, could also be. But, so Advaita, the non-dual, is older than Buddhism. Way, way old. And we have to be careful when we apply these old techniques in a modern society, in our culture, that we don't do spiritual bypassing. because these societies was in a different unneurotic state than our societies are. We are brought up with the Christian church and God knows what of madness that we had to deal with. So I totally agree with Osho that we have to do things that is contemporarily, that we cannot just apply these old techniques uncritical on this modern man. So what did Osho do? He did dynamic meditation, for instance. He suggested that as a way to unburden this constant drama here that people are lost in. Freeing your feelings, freeing your sexuality, free your anger. Otherwise you cannot ask the question, who is angry? Who is angry? You would be pulled back in again. So, yeah, what is to have a strong ego and kind of to be able to work with these things? I don't know if I like this idea about a strong ego, but there has to be a certain level of not being totally lost in this. You can take, if you take somebody who's psychotic or whatever, if the person is totally identified with this madness, we call them psychotic, and we have to give them pill or something. What happens when we give them pills or something? Maybe the drama there relaxes, or there can be a moment of the sense of me. Because there's only a degree difference between your so-called normal people and the people in the madhouses. There's only a degree. Because even if you have a very hard time, you feel that there's something in you that is not involved. On a very subtle level. You still say, I. You feel that there's something that is not totally lost in it. That's the normal state. Otherwise, everybody is... some is in the madhouse, some is not yet. But when we are totally identified with this, absolutely identified, then we call people mad.